the various winding roads. The area between Afrin and Jarablus Jazeera is home to several different ethnic groups. In the Jazeera Canton, this is part of the corridor, there are Kurds, Arabs, Syriacs, Chaldeans, Armenians, and Chechens. Arabs make up 30% of the population. The Kobani and Afrin cantons are predominantly Kurdish. At Tel Abyad, the Kurds constitute 40 to 45% of the population. In Jarablus, Arabs and Turkmens are in the majority. There is no doubt that many Kurds dream of a fully fledged, united West Kurdistan from Jazeera to Afrin. And that's the other thing. Obama, seize the initiative. Push aside Skull and Bones, Kerry, Newland, these other creatures, Samantha Power, the humanitarian bomber. What we're going to need is the United States sponsorship of an independent Kurdish state. In other words, get the leaders of the YPG and their political arm to Washington and proclaim in a White House ceremony independent Kurdistan. Now, that would at this point be West Kurdistan. Let that become the Piedmont, right? The Piedmont of a new independent country. Piedmont meaning, of course, that, as Piedmont, the Kingdom of Sardinia in Italy from the 1840s to the 1870s became the center around which United Italy was constructed. So we need a Piedmont. So let's start with West Kurdistan, proclaim that at the White House, win the Kurds as eternal allies for the United States by making that gesture, right? And it would be highly substantive. If the United States won't do it, well, then maybe Russia should do it, right? Or if the German forces can go in there, then they could sponsor an independent Kurdish state. Whoever does it is going to make some permanent friends. They'll make some temporary enemies among the Erdogan group, but the Erdogan group has to go no matter what else happens. So this character Sanger of the New York Times said, well, if it turns out that that really was an ISIS bomb, really done by ISIS, that might prod Russia to give a greater priority to bombing ISIS. Because the thing is, as we've said, Russia has bombed primarily these other groups, right? The Free Syrian Army, the Nusra Brigades, Al-Qaeda, and so forth. And again, we're not criticizing that. We're simply saying, right now, if you want to be a friend of Europe, you've got to take care of ISIS. And it's not even such a big operation, right? It's simply the interdiction of a border. So I urge everybody to get involved with that. So let's now change gears. We want to talk about U.S. Domestic politics. Some of this stuff is funny. Now, we can use this as comic relief. Ben Carson is cratering. I think today being Friday the 6th of November, Ben Carson has essentially blown his cover as a serious candidate. In other words, he's highly unstable, mentally unreliable person. Ben Carson has written an autobiography, campaign autobiography, where he says that he got into a fight with his friend Bob, and he tried to kill his friend Bob with a knife, I think. Now, the pattern that we're seeing in all these cases is that Carson says, yes, I did these things, and the media says, prove it. But unfortunately, from the point of view of the voter, the fact that Carson is claiming to have done these things, this makes him look more and more like a mentally unstable person who should not be involved in the Oval Office. Carson insists that he tried to hit his mother with a hammer. He says that he threw a rock at somebody's face and broke their glasses. He has gotten into a feud with CNN. He was on there today. Carson says to CNN, do you think I'm a pathological liar? I was reminded of Richard Nixon saying, I am not a crook. Carson then says that the pyramids of Egypt were actually not mausoleums, not tombs, but were built for grain storage. Carson says that Obamacare is the modern equivalent of slavery. He also says that if the Jewish population of Germany had been suitably armed, they could have stopped Hitler. He's also got ideas about having a third class of bathrooms, men, women, and transgender. And Carson says that the coverage on his campaign offered by the networks is all garbage. What can we make of this? It seems to me that this candidacy was extremely fragile, and now these reckless, irresponsible, and unverifiable statements, I think, will tend to rule him out of consideration. Now, we got other problems going on for these people. We've got Bernie Sanders. We'll get to him in just a second on World Crisis Radio. Welcome to the second hour of World Crisis Radio. It's the 6th of November, 2015, and this is Webster Tarpley once again. Now, we have a very important report coming up. This is from Pino Cabras, who is currently located on that wonderful island of Sardinia in the Mediterranean, which is his base of operations. So Pino Cabras was...
Hello, how are you?
Ciao. Pino Cabras was the organizer, or one of the principal organizers of this conference that we had in Rome on the 26th of October in the Sala Cavour. We had this large and significant international conference on no to NATO and no to war. So I thought it would be good to get Pino on to give you a summary of what went on, some of the high points, but also the idea that this conference is setting up a mechanism, a kind of clearinghouse for information about people who want to fight against NATO excesses and the maneuvers, right? The Trident juncture and so forth. So Pino, please give the listeners an idea of what went on.
Yes, Europe is punctuated of many peace movements that in the last decades have lost the capacity of doing a network and connecting themselves. And now our first goal was to collect a large number of signatures under our call for a neutral Europe. And we have been able to create an European committee where they will converge all those movements, political parties, trade unions, cultural organizations, single individuals, journalists who share this goal. At the moment, we have collected 10 countries' movements. That is a good starting point.
Okay. And so that's going to go on. If we could just backtrack a little bit, right? I would say a couple of the high points of the conference were obviously the speech by the famous investigating judge Ferdinando Imposimato, who was there and spoke.
The honorary president of the Supreme Court of Italy.
Right, and I translated it, so it's hard to remember, but principally the idea was his investigation of the Moro assassination pointed to the CIA, and at the same time, his investigation of 9/11 pointed to the fact that this was actually a staged provocation and not at all what the U.S. government or the Kane-Hamilton Commission has said. Then we also had this lady, the senator from Latvia, talking.
Yes, she's a European member of the Parliament, of the European Parliament, Tatiana Zdanoka.
Zdanoka, right.
Yes, we also have members of the parliament from Cyprus, from Norway, and from Italy as well. Many important members of the parliament from Italy.
Now, on that, the interesting thing was that the Italian presence was, of course, extremely important. It was, a half a dozen senators, some of them from the Five-Star movement of Beppe Grillo,
Yeah.
but some also from other parties. And maybe you talk a little bit about the politics of that.
Yes, in Italy, there is raising a strong opposition now against the new military posture of Italy. In the recent days, in the very last week, we had some important release in Sardinia, in Sicily, in Naples, where we have seen an interesting movement against the war. That is the main goal of this struggle against the NATO maneuvers.
The other thing that struck me was people from Sicily, from you also, right, pointing out that Italy, this wonderful garden of the world, is now being soiled and polluted by military maneuver, like shooting off hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition. These bases are dirty and they are a public nuisance, and people want to get rid of them just on the basis of not even what they would do in war, but what they mean in peacetime or a quasi peacetime.
Yeah, this is something very strange to see thousands of soldiers in this big war game. That is like having an army in a war, even if we are supposed to be in peace in this moment. And many speeches during the meeting have explained very well that getting out from NATO, even if it would trigger many political problems for Italy, would cause a net gain in the environment in terms of political profit and reducing the danger of being involved in some war we didn't decide to be in. So we are trying to create the knowledge of the dividend, the gain we can achieve with neutral posture of Italy. Neutral means that nobody will perceive a country as an enemy. It means to achieve more national security and have a chance in peace process in North Africa, in Middle East.
Right, and not be a protectorate of anybody. I guess concerning this maneuver, Trident Juncture, I guess this is over by now. Am I right?
No, it's not over.
It's still going on. Why don't you give us an update on that?
Yeah, they are continuing to shoot an incredible quantity of ammunition, and they are involving 28 countries, concentrated in some Mediterranean areas. And this is huge, and it is perceived like the largest war game in the latest 25 years. So this is a strange creature for a peace movement, for a peace alliance, supposed to be.
Exactly. Well, this is exactly what it's not. So now, what's next on your agenda? When's the next meeting? What are the organizational steps, and maybe how people from over here could relate to them?
I think we have to share the goal of networking many organizations to create a European peace movement. At the moment, many people in Europe not even know what NATO is about, how influential is in the life of many countries. So our aim now is to build a new connection, even at the media level, institute an international news and information network. This is a good starting point for the next 3 months.
And I guess you have Pandora Television, which is already active, right?
Yes. Now we are broadcasting in the web, and we are trying to create a stronger TV network and to be able to go by satellite and to broadcast in 3 different languages.
And I would also point out one memorable speech for me was Giulietto Chiesa, who was, I guess, in some ways the chairman of the entire event, right? And Giulietto is a heroic figure, right? He was the Moscow correspondent for the L'Unità of the Italian Communist Party, then of La Stampa of Fiat, but also